Today, the Below Average Joe's MMA show present the weekend preview. We are talking about everything involving hashtag UFC San Antonio, headlined by an absolutely massive bantamweight fight between Marlon Chito Vera and Cory Sandhagen. What will happen? We don't know, but I think we're going to have a lot of fun regardless. We also have plenty of other fights to talk about. Holly Holm back in action, among others. And Dominic, that's not all because we have some headlines, including Leon Edwards says he will turn down a fight with Colby Covington. We got Dana White talking about going back into boxing. And we have some fight announcements. All this and more. And it all starts right now. Welcome back, everybody, to the show presented by, well, two most typical podcasters. Just put our faces up there. This is what every podcast duo looks like. You always see those memes going around. That's us. I'm the fat one. My name's Noah Baker. I come to you from the great state of Indiana. The man on your left is Dominic Slee. The man that we all love is Dominic Slee. Dominic coming to us from the great state of Ohio, the state that I will be here soon a permanent resident of once again. And Dominic, we have a good card to go over here for UFC San Antonio. Cory Sandhagen taking on Marlon Chito Vera. A lot of other fights on here, but it kind of starts with that main event. Give me your thoughts, just how you're doing, how you're feeling about this weekend as a whole. You're dropping shit. Your room's falling apart. I mean, what's going on?
I'm doing good, man. It's been a good week. It's been a busy week. Staying busy, getting some things done. But it always feels good to stay busy. But now we're in the studio. We've got a great card, a pretty solid card for San Antonio, Texas. I think they're going to enjoy it. The main event, it don't get much better than that. I mean, when you've got two top 5 bantamweights, you know you're in for a treat, regardless of how you match them up. We just had a great one 2 weeks ago. We're getting another one here. Bantamweight's on fire. I'm so pumped to break down this fight. Life's good. Life's great. No, I hope the same for you as we head into this final weekend. Yeah, final weekend of March already.
They say April showers are nearly approaching, and they were calling for here in Indiana. Supposedly this week we were supposed to get up to 5 inches of rain.
Wow.
Part of that was, I believe, yesterday. The rest of it's supposed to come tomorrow and Saturday. So, going to be a fun weekend, it sounds like. I will probably do what I do most of the time, and I will stay in the apartment.
There you go.
But Dominic, it all starts with that main event for UFC San Antonio. Let's see that odds on the screen. Marlon Vera, plus 140, taking on Cory Sandhagen, minus 165. However, Marlon Vera, number 3rd ranked bantamweight in the world. Cory Sandhagen, number 5. So top 5 matchup, a amazing main event. Clearly has a lot of stakes to this talent-stacked bantamweight division. You already mentioned we had another big fight in that division just 2 weeks ago where Murav Dvalishvili put on the performance of his life and dominated the former champion, Petr Yan. So, Dominic, a question for you to kind of start here. We sort of know that Marlon Vera has a lot at stake here. I mean, he is clearly, in the title picture. He is in the mix. He feels like one of those guys that is one away.
Yeah.
Even though we kind of have a few guys that feel like they're one away.
Also,
so the motivation is obviously there for Marlon Vera. What does this fight mean for Cory Sandhagen? Like, where does he really fall in your eyes in the current bantamweight division, the current title picture? How far away is he from putting himself back into a title shot?
Yeah, it's honestly crazy, man. We literally have everyone outside of Aljamain is 1 win away from a title shot, it feels like, at bantamweight. It's just so sick right now, this division. For Cory, it's interesting, though, especially with a loss, because then we're talking 3 out of his last 4 being losses. Now, yes, they would all be to top-level competition. It would be Marlon Vera, it would be Petr Yan, and it would be TJ Dillashaw. You could argue that he beat TJ Dillashaw, and even in the Peter Yan fight, very close, very competitive, fantastic fight. My favorite fight of all of 2021. Cory Sandhagen is always competing and in close fights. And Marlon Vera, kind of the same. Like, yeah, he finds ways to pull away big, but they always start pretty close and then he kind of edges his way. So when these two clash, it makes it very exciting. But I will say this, Noah, if Cory were to lose here, I feel like, we've called for him to get that step back just so it doesn't, like, you don't want all these losses to number one contenders to build up on your resume
Mhm.
because, yeah, like it's against top level guys, but if you're not beating them, it's hard to put you into that title shot. So if he does lose here, I think we do need to see that legitimate step back to, like, number 10 and backwards in a next fight. But that's all basically a Monday conversation, but that's just how I feel going in. So I do think just as much is on the line here for Cory Sandhagen as there is for Marlon Vera. Because if Marlon wins, that's a title shot. That's 5 straight wins against incredible opponents. So it's almost like in two different kind of aspects, because I feel like if Marlon loses to Cory, it's not as detrimental as Cory losing to Marlon. So that's my thoughts. That's where my head's at in terms of the storylines heading in. What do you got for me?
That's very fair assessment. I do feel like we said a lot of the same things about Cory Sandhagen when he fought Song Yadong his last time out.
Mm,
Of course, at that time, he was coming off back to back losses. Um, Even more so, a reason for him to get a win. So that way we didn't have to push him to the, fighting
hmm
backwards and stuff. And then he gets a win there and he looked great. I mean, he looked
Yeah.
absolutely awesome. Him and Song Yadong had a great fight, but per usual with Cory Sandhagen, he won it out with the volume, but also Dominic,
Man.
he had a little more zip on those punches. He
Yeah.
packed a little more of a punch, and truthfully, I thought in a lot of ways his conditioning and his ability to take a shot better. Just he had a better ability to withstand punishment. Song
Mm,
Yadong, he wanted to keep going, but his body just told him no. He had
yeah.
I believe the eye had swollen up and he
hmm
couldn't see out of
hmm
it. So that's sort of what ended things. But he looked great. So I guess he is still kind of in a vulnerable position because the problem isn't really the loss. Like it's not that he's losing. Like yeah, that's not
Right.
good.
Right.
But it's the fact that the people he's lost to, like TJ Dillashaw retired. So okay, there you go. But Peter Yan, another loss, and then you had Aljamain Sterling. I believe
Yep.
those are his 3 UFC losses. Aljamain's the champion. Peter Yan also in a weird spot, but you know because of that, like it does kind of feel like he has a little bit more room to work with. I mean, this is one of the fresh matchups for him though in that top
Yep.
5. Like that's what
Yep.
makes it so important is because who knows when he would get an opportunity to fight someone like Sean O'Malley or Marab. Do you
Right.
even want to fight either one of those guys? Like it's not exactly an easy fight either way. So he has to kind of take advantage of these fresh matchups for him so that as you say, I think that's more the bigger problem here. If the losses continue to pile up and it's people who are still going to remain relevant in
Yes.
that bantamweight division for the next 2, 3, 4 years, it's hard to get that win back all the time. Like it's not
Yep.
easy to get back into a rematch scenario. Not everybody gets a Leon Edwards situation where they claw their way back and look at all he had to go through to get that title fight in the first
Right.
place. So, um, with that being said, though, I'm going to tell you why I'm betting on Marlon Vera in this fight
Okay. Please do.
because I did take him money line plus 140. I do believe this fight's very close. I believe it's like razor thin close.
Yeah. Yeah.
I expect this to be mostly a striking affair, and I think it's going to be glorious. I think it's going to be very
hmm
fun. I don't
hmm
expect a quick finish when you have these two guys. I just don't see that happening. By the way, did you realize this is Marlon Vera's 21st UFC bout? I mean,
It really is wild.
yeah, guy under the radar for so many years, and then he's really just. I don't want to say. I feel like that's an overused comparison for me at this point to call him like another version of Charles Oliveira. But in some ways, he is like. But even he didn't have near the expectations Charles had when he was on his struggle.
Yeah.
Marlon Vera
He's
was
only
just like,
30.
yeah. That's even crazier. With that being said, I'm taking Marlon Vera money line. Biggest reason comes down to I know this is it's a fresh matchup. The type of striking, the volume with which Cory Sandhagen throws with is not necessarily something Marlon Vera has been accustomed to at that level. Same could be said for the power of Marlon Vera against Cory Sandhagen and the durability mixed in with that.
For sure.
And Marlon Vera is very patient as well. He's willing to go down in a fight in order to pick his shot later. Did that with Dominic Cruz, I believe, and Frankie Edgar. So I think it benefits Marlon Vera this being a 5-round fight because Cory does come out pretty fast and puts a lot of volume into his strike. So he's able to build off having kind of a striking lead on you. But I will just say, and again, MMA math doesn't really work, but I'm just going to look at the fact Cory Sandhagen's last 2 losses, which did go the full distance, full 5 rounds, he outstruck both Petr Yan and TJ Dillashaw. I know the Dillashaw one's controversial for that reason because most of Dillashaw's work was done in the clinch, up against the fence.
Yeah.
I think he had torn his ACL, right, for that during that fight. So, but the Yan one, he did outstrike him as well. Pretty close, but still outstruck him and lost. You look at Marlon Vera, who one of the fights that stuck out to me was his Rob Font main event.
For sure.
Rob Font, it was the biggest, I believe, in UFC history, the biggest single fight striking differential where the loser had more strikes than the winner. It's kind of a weird record to word properly. But essentially, Rob Font, I believe, over doubled Marlon Vera's strikes for that fight. And yet Marlon Vera won 4 of the 5 rounds.
And it felt so clear, even as a fan, that he had won.
Completely. Because the power shots of Vera were the difference. He picks his shots so well. He's methodical in his approach. And it has worked out for him up to this point. Now, he is going up against Cory Sandhagen, who I think is at this point, I would say he's better than Rob Font. I would say he's better at this point than Dominic Cruz, even though I still think Dominic Cruz being a little bit slept on in the division.
Yep.
I would say he's better than Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar, of course, retired.
Yes.
So because of that, can Marlon Vera come back from being down here? Because I do think that's what's going to happen. I do think he probably drops this first round. Is he able to be losing half a round and do what he kind of did to Rob Font, where he lands a massive barrage of shots and is able to drop him, hurt him, whatever, show the visible wear and tear? That's really what made the difference there. So if he can't do that, if he can't find those opportunities to really show the judges the kind of damage he's inflicting, big shots, big moments, it might be a tough fight for him to get a win on. It might be one of those decisions where, Vera has his moments, but ultimately Sandhagen just builds up too much of a lead and is too durable for even Vera to put away. But I'm sort of banking on him being able to pick those shots well enough to where he will make the most of them. And for Cory, he starts out hot, and I'm not going to say he slows down or gasses out, but I feel like where Cory starts and where Vera start, they reverse by the end of the fight. Like Cory starts out hot, Vera starts out a little more patient. By the end of the fight, you got Sandhagen who's going to be slightly more reluctant, while Vera's the one that's going to be pushing the pace. That's how I see it going. If it was a 3-round fight, I would have not near the confidence in Marlon Vera here. But due to the circumstances, due to the 5 rounds, and the fact that he's plus money, pretty decent plus money, if the odds were reversed, I'd probably take Cory Sandhagen and be trying to convince you guys now why I thought that was a good idea. But as it stands, that is my reason for Marlon Vera. Dominic, anything that you feel differently about this matchup on? Is there anything I'm missing from these guys in terms of their X's and O's?
No, I think that's great. And odds aside, let's talk about a narrative here that you just discussed. It almost sounds so familiar to one Petr Yan, does it not? Someone that starts down, starts a little slower, and will then analyze, make the adjustments, pull ahead in the later rounds, which is exactly what Petr Yan did against Cory Sandhagen. Now, the biggest difference between Vera and Yan is the way in which they strike, because Vera, a lot more kick heavy, a lot more power even than what Petr Yan presents. So the power discrepancy does separate them, but the way that they start slow, they try to pick shots. Where will it get me in rounds 3, 4, 5 are very similar here. And being that we've seen Cory lose a fight in that matter to Petr Yan, not necessarily a tit for tat blueprint here for Vera, but you got to think for him mentally going in that he knows over the course of 5 rounds, I can do something that someone else has already done to Sandhagen. This fight is just electric, man. And it speaks volumes to how great 135 pounds is right now in the UFC. It's the best division in MMA right now in the UFC, undoubtedly, I think, for sure. And this is beautiful. And maybe this is more of a Monday conversation too, just because of so many heavy things, right? But don't you at least feel that if Marlon Vera wins here and makes it 5 in a row with big steps up in competition each step of the way, not to mention he has a win over Sean O'Malley as well, who's number 1 right now.
That's true.
It feels like the man has earned a title fight, but with 2 other people that have also done the same thing. Like, what do you make of that for Vera? Does it almost like kind of for him make it not less important, but just like, oh man, like I can have a really good win here and maybe it still won't matter. Like, what do you kind of make of this situation?
Well, it makes me confident he's really going to go for it here. I mean, I think he's really going for it. If you see some of the comments he made this week, you know, he was being pretty real, as he's one to do. I mean, he's Cheeto, right? He's a fucking boss. And when he was speaking to the media some this week, he said things like, I mean, he was talking about the UFC rankings. I don't give a fuck about the UFC rankings. Like, they can give a guy who's ranked number 10 a title shot. I got to go out there and earn it, basically. So, you know, and he said he's fine with that. And I think that added motivation is only going to thrive him here. You know, this is a guy who 21 fights, well, it'll be 21 fights after Saturday. 20 fights in is just now starting to get the respect that he has deserved for probably much longer than that. He's really coming to his own. He's put it all together. Now's the time. For a guy like that who remembers probably being that guy that was curtain jerking a lot of cards early on in his career, who was probably making very little money in terms of the UFC, you know, I'm sure he remembers that. And with a guy like that, you look at this as like, if I lose, I might risk going back to that. So that's just, again, these guys are built completely different. He's at a point where he probably feels he's in a more fragile position than he actually is, which, again, I think is just going to add more motivation to him to go in there and get that win, or at least really go for it. You know, I don't think he's going to hold back. I think by the end of it, Cory Sandhagen could very well win this fight. But I don't think we're going to say Marlon Vera is going to look at the tape and wish he had done more. I really don't think so. I think if Cory Sandhagen wins, it's because he was the better man on that night. No questions asked.
Yeah, dude, a win here for either guy, it's not coming easy. It's going to be a scratch, claw, dogfight, either side of the coin. That's why it's wonderful.
Good touch on a good point, by the way. You kind of mentioned it in passing about the leg kicks, though, because that could be a really big weapon here for Vera.
With the movement
he's leg kick heavy, and of course he likes to keep himself at a leg kicking distance because of that. Cory Sandhagen, also a guy who kind of likes to fight from range, but in order to win this fight, I feel like Cory's going to have to get more in the pocket, which again opens him up to a lot of those power shots from Marlon Vera. That's just, I'm glad you reminded me of that. That was another point that I had in my head of like, yes, this is going to rationale my bet on Marlon Vera. That will probably not hit, but that's okay. I will also mention I do have a leg of a parlay with this fight on it. That's for this fight to start round 4. So
okay.
I do see that this fight going a little bit longer. Of course, there's a chance anything can happen, but both guys, durability on both these guys' sides to really turn this into a dogfight. I don't think it ends before the championship rounds. I just don't.
No, I agree.
With that, Dominic, we will look at the rest of UFC San Antonio. And you know what? I'm feeling a little frisky today, Dominic. I'm just going to open up the whole card to you. The whole card. Boy. Main card, prelims. I want your little brain, well, your big brain, but your little mind to run wild. with whatever fight you want to talk about.
Okay, so we do have a really good main card. It's a really good 6-fight main card. Shall we start with some flyweight action, though, Noah? I
Yeah,
mean,
you
it,
got
it, it
to.
feels
You
like
got
we
to.
should, right, on this show. So number
Men or
6,
women, you know?
men or women, yeah,
We're the
damn
pride
right.
of the flyweights for both sides.
I'm getting 125 men's and women's tattooed each ass cheek. I'm going to have to eventually. Number 6, Alex Perez. Number 9,
Yeah.
Manel Kape. Alex Perez
Fuck
plus
yeah, dude.
150, Manel Kape minus 175. Fantastic matchmaking here. It really is. Perez coming off 2 straight first-round submission losses, but they are to 2 of the top 5 flyweights in the world. Davis and Figueiredo for a title, humongous layoff, and then lost to Alejandro Pantoja, who should be fighting next against Brandon Moreno for the title. Big layoff there, as I mentioned. I believe, now shout out to GC for this on the MMA Hour, in that, kind of 2.5 year now point, 8 bouts canceled for Alex Perez.
Yeah.
Not all of them his fault, but damn.
That's
That is
crazy
a
that you
shame.
just said that, because I was just in my head going, whenever he lets me talk, I'm
Yeah.
going to say, shout out to GC for this.
Yeah.
But the only thing I'm worried about is this fight actually taking place. As long as it
recording
gets there,
on Thursday. Yeah.
as long as it gets there,
Yes.
Dominic, fuck yes. Put this fight into my motherfucking veins, dog.
Yeah. I think, because of that layoff, Perez probably not getting the respect he should be going into this. This is a guy that going into the title fight was on a 3-fight win streak, 2 straight finishes. He was the first Contender Series alum to challenge for a title. The guy's really good. So I hope that all this time off hasn't plagued him of his prime years. Manel Kape, okay? We were pumped when he came into the UFC, and boy, did he falter. He had 2 very lackluster performances. Pantoja was his debut, hell of a debut fight looking back on it hindsight. And then Matheus Nicolau, also a super tough fight for your second one. He lost both, and the output just wasn't there. The what's the word? Shit. When they go for it. Urgency. Thank you. The urgency wasn't there. Ever since then, completely changed man. 3 straight wins, 2 of them by finish. Even the fight with Dvorak, that's just shout out to David Dvorak for not going down, because he had multiple opportunities to finish him there and he just couldn't. That's how tough that guy is. So he's really coming into it right now, and he's still only 29 years old. This should be very, very exciting, and it's very important. Like I said, number 6 versus number 9. If Manel can put 4 straight wins here together, I think 1 more after this, and he's finally in that title shot picture, which is what I, and even I believe you, have kind of at least expected of him with all the hype he had coming into the UFC. Perez, he needs to bounce back. No better way to do it than this new kind of star boy. I think that's even his nickname, Manel Kape. I know you love it. You've already said injected into your veins. Just give me a little bit more of your thoughts.
No, I love this fight. It is the second best fight on the card, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's why it's somewhat annoying, and it's like opening the main card kind of. But, I'm not going to harp on that too much, because the UFC does a lot of weird bout orders, so who cares?
Yeah.
But can we just say for Alex Perez, what a weird place he's in, because that stat you just threw out is nuts. And not all of those are his fault, by the way. The 8 fights not, coming into fruition, 8 canceled bouts, whatever. Not all of those are his fault, but some of them are. And he has had some issues with making weight.
Yeah.
And, this is the guy, by the way, who, even though it was under interesting circumstances, he's the first Contender Series guy to ever fight for a UFC title. He did so against Davis and Figueiredo back in the early days of this podcast, UFC 255. Not one of the better UFC cards of recent memory, better pay-per-views anyway. Not so much. But he was the first to do it. Now it feels like, Dominic, he's lost 2 in a row, both by first-round submissions. With a loss here, especially if it's quick, another quick finish, you got to think they probably give him 1 more at least, because flyweights already doesn't have a ton of names in it.
Yeah.
But he is a guy, if let's say he loses this one, and let's say the next time out he has a weight miss, this is a guy that's at risk of being on the chopping block. He's an exciting fighter, which I think helps him. 4 straight fights, 4 straight first-round finishes, 2 losses, 2 wins. But that's been the problem. It's become much more sporadic for him to actually show up. And there's
Yeah.
nothing. I can't imagine there being much that Dana and the boys hate more than scheduling a bout and that guy either missing weight or having to pull
Yeah.
out of the bout. It's like
Yep.
right up, on fight week and stuff. So he's got to be in a vulnerable place. While Manel Kape finally feels like he's gotten himself out of whatever that rut was
Yeah.
he has just looked completely reborn after that 2-fight skid he took to start his career. Was it the Nicolau fight, or was it actually his win against Osborne where he missed weight too?
It was the first win of the 3-fight win streak
Okay.
that he missed weight. Yeah.
So
So even
again,
then we were
even with
like,
that
damn.
first win, it's like,
Yeah.
can this guy just put it all together? Well, I think
Right.
he's done that. I think his last
Yeah.
time out, even though it wasn't a finish, like you said, I thought it was probably his most complete performance to date in the UFC.
Yeah.
And the first round finish of Zalga Zamagulate. I always forget how to pronounce this guy's name.
Zumagulov.
The guy with like 4 wives or whatever he said. He's about that life,
Okay.
So, but I was a good finish. But David Dvorak, I thought, was just a more complete performance.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely the second best fight. I'm gonna say, Dominic, in order to, even though there's probably another fight that I prefer, I will do the co-main just to kind of keep it somewhat on the higher part of the card here. Holly Holm taking on Yana Santos. Dominic, would it surprise you to know that Holly Holm's only 7-6 in her UFC career?
Honestly, at this point, no. But at one point, I would have said, "What? You're crazy." But I
Yeah.
understand the narrative. Yeah.
Yeah, and what's crazier is, so she's coming off a loss, Ketlin Vieira. I still stand by that. I thought she won that fight.
Yeah.
But before that, she had won back-to-back fights against Irene Aldana and Raquel Pennington. That's not nothing, right? That's a
Yeah.
pretty good wins. However, before that, she hadn't had a winning streak in the UFC since she knocked out Ronda Rousey.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy, but and this doesn't really paint the best picture because you dig into those losses and wins and you see she's fighting nothing but the best
Champions.
competition.
Yeah.
It's a bit like Justin Gaethje's record last week. It just doesn't really tell the full story. But there is a question. That Ketlin Vieira fight was not the best Holly Holm we had seen in recent memory. You look at that Irene Aldana fight, Holly Holm looked
That
like
was
an
the
absolute
best
beast.
outside of Rousey.
That was 2020, fall of 2020. That fight with Ketlin Vieira was it was about a year and a half later.
Mm-hmm.
And she did not look like the same version of Holly Holm that fought that fight. And, maybe some of that's due to Ketlin Vieira. But now you look at Irene Aldana, who's right back in the title discussion, potentially the next girl to take on Amanda Nunes. It just makes me wonder, Holly Holm's, 38, 37 now?
41.
Okay. Even
and
more
just
so.
signed a 6-fight deal.
Yeah, she just signed it. And I'm not going to look too much into that because a lot of fighters at the end will sign these like crazy long contracts, but they only end up fighting like 2 more fights and then they just retire. So, but it is interesting. The UFC's talking to her about boxing, which we'll talk more about later. But I just think that's the big question here because I think if Holly Holm is who Holly Holm should be here, I don't see her losing to Yana Santos. Yana Santos is a solid fighter. She's a good fighter. Married to a guy that's going to be debuting in the PFL here soon, Thiago Santos. She apparently fought pregnant, if you ask Dom. I disagree. But funny enough, if you look at their last 5 fights, they're on the same trajectory. You go 5 fights back, they've won 1, lost 1, back-to-back wins. Now they're coming off losses. Santos did it against Irene Aldana. That was a really impressive knockout for Aldana, actually. So, yeah, I mean, I do think Holly Holm's just a much better fighter, but the question is she going to be Holly Holm as we expect her to be on this night? But I am kind of my parlays would tell you that I am believing in that because the parlay that had Vera Sandhagen to start round 4, second leg Holly Holm money line. Dominic, I have another parlay on here. I put Holm Santos over 1.5 as one of the 3 legs. So I feel like that's a pretty safe bet. I think that was like a minus freaking 600 or something for that to happen. So, hopefully Holly looks good, but not too good.
Yeah, I love both of those, and I also have Holly Holm as part of a 2-leg money line parlay. And it's basically what you said. I I put it on my sheet here. She's my Marvin Vittori this week. I just don't see her losing this fight to Yana Santos. I would be really, really surprised if Santos can pull that out. And maybe she can. She's been out for a while. Obviously, she had a baby, but still a long layoff. She's got a good training camp at American Top Team. For all I know, she could pull off the upset here. She's like 8 years younger now. But I'm still holding on to that Holly Holm that fought Irene Aldana. I still think she's there. At least some portion of it's there. And I think even a portion of that Holly Holm can beat Yana Santos. So
Okay. And I'll go ahead and take the next one, and then I'll kick it to you for the fourth fight we're going to talk about. So, again, there's a couple fights that I have a couple of my guys on here. I got Landwehr on here. I got Duraev on here. But I'm actually going to talk about Andrea Lee, Maycee Barber, and this is pretty much to ask you a question, Dom. Is Maycee Barber back? Like, is she back to being kind of who we thought she could be before that 2-fight skid, before the long layoff? 3 fights in a row, wins. All 3 of them, she's gotten better and better. The Jessica I win was a particularly impressive performance. Andrea Lee, a step up from Jessica I, especially the version of Jessica I that she was fighting. Is she back?
I think so. I really think so. And I'm glad you worded your question that way, because I kind of like put the exact same thing on my sheet here, because she's the second leg of my parlay with Holly Holm. It's a ladies' night parlay. I don't feel like I've had one in a while, but I really, really like this one. That one is minus 105, so 1.05 units put down on that 2-leg money line. And I think she's back. You put it perfectly. She has looked better and better with each passing fight. I feel like that hype that was once there for 19-year-old Maycee Barber, let's be honest, that's a little unfair. It's different now for 24-year-old Maycee Barber. The hype's here. I'm back on that train. A win here against Andrea Lee tells me a lot too, because she's no slouch. She's had a ton of high-level competition. I'm with you.
I will definitely be buying into that. I'm a little resistant right now, but if she beats Andrea Lee, especially if she looks particularly good, I'm talking, because she has that Miranda Maverick win where it wasn't all that, Miranda Maverick's very good, but it wasn't exactly the most convincing win. If she's able to convincingly beat Andrea Lee, then I'll probably be back on saying, okay, she's a real threat.
Yep.
I will also mention I have a little action on that fight as well. That second parlay, I'm going to call it, it just came to me, I'm going to call it the good party ratio parlay. That's because we got 4 girls and 2 guys. So I already said Holm Santos over 1.5. You got Lee Barber over 1.5. And then I'm sure we'll mention it at least, but I do have Pineda Lutz under 2.5 on there. So
you dirty
parlay,
dog.
Parlay comes out to plus 109.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
So Dominic, your next fight.
I will say, honestly, I only had one other one on here. There's plenty of sleepers, but it's just the talking points. There's more to be had on Monday, I feel like. But it's hard for me not to discuss Chidi and Njokuani versus Albert Duraev. Chidi minus 150, Duraev plus 130. It screams banger to me, but it also screams be careful, Dominic, what you're going to bet at the same time. Chidi has 14 knockouts. Duraev, all 4 of his losses are by knockout. However, Duraev has a very grapple-heavy style, and Chidi does not. And when Chidi loses, 7 of his 8 are by finish. There are routes for both guys to clearly win this fight. The problem is I don't have the confidence as to which man can take that route quicker. And that's why I personally stayed away from this as much as I wanted to. But I did get a little hint on the DraftKings betting group that you did not explain to me, Noah.
Yeah, so I took Albert Duraev at plus 130. Again, I like the plus money on that. But I'm about to tell you something that kind of would point anybody in the opposite direction. What you just said, completely facts. And the Duraev that fought on the Contender Series showed just that. I believe it was against Caio Bittencourt. And it was a first-round submission, just real quick, took him down, got him out of there. And I was very impressed by it. That's why he's been one of my guys.
Yeah.
Problem is, okay, he's 1-1 in the UFC. He's fought Roman Kopylov, and then he fought Joaquin Buckley.
Yeah.
Both pretty fun fights, but the problem in both of them, even though he's won against Roman, is that he almost gets a little too comfortable just having a kickboxing fight. He doesn't show any sense of urgency in those two fights to really take it to the ground.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it nearly cost him against Kopylov. I felt like that Roman Kopylov fight should have been easier for him than he made it. And that's not because Kopylov isn't a good fighter, but it's because he wanted to fight out striking a guy who is known for striking without
Mhm.
even I don't even know if he delivered one takedown in that fight, even attempted one. Against Buckley, it was a lot of the same. And Buckley's a harder guy to take down for sure.
Yeah.
But to be honest, it just that's my fear with this fight is he has a clear path here. You go for Chidi, you take him down, you dominate him on the ground. It's happened against Chidi many times before. Problem is that what he's going to do? I think he will, and that's why I put the money on it. But I'm not exactly confident that that's what he's going to do. To be honest, I feel like the most likely outcome of this fight is based off what we've seen in their UFC careers thus far is Chidi winning this thing by TKO or knockout because
Yeah. Yeah.
I just know that that's what Chidi's going to look to do. What is Duraev going to look to do based off his two UFC bouts? I don't exactly know. So
Yeah.
I'm sort of making this bet off of a projection. Not the smartest way to bet, but he's one of my guys. I kind of, it wouldn't feel right. Even though I like Chidi, it wouldn't feel right to bet on him.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair.
Any action for you on this fight? Or you said you stayed away, right?
Well, see, I don't have a lot of plays right now, and honestly, I
Mhm.
don't like this card. And part of that's
Yep.
probably credit to the odds makers, to be
Yeah.
honest. I feel like they
Yeah.
nailed it everywhere, so it makes it hard for bettors.
We'll talk about that
Um,
more when we
yeah.
get to the bet slip because I have a similar issue, but yeah, we'll talk
So
about that.
I'm not completely like 100% done with my bets. Like when we get to the bet slip later, I might not be done. There might be more to come this weekend, but it's just tough for me. I maybe will take Chidi by knockout because I believe it's plus odds, but we shall see. But yeah, nothing right now on this one.
I'll just give two quick shout outs to two fights that I feel like are going to be have the potential to be a lot of fun, I should say. First off, Nate Landwehr taking on Austin Lingo.
Yeah.
Landwehr is just always in fun fights. Even if Austin Lingo, you have more of a fear of. I mean, the guy's got 5 decisions in 10 fights in his professional MMA career, so not exactly a decision heavy fighter, but not exactly a electric finisher either. And in his 3 UFC bouts, they've all gone to a decision, which actually, since I'm talking about it, I'll mention the bet I put. I did take this fight to actually start round 3 at minus 120.
I don't hate it.
So it's hard because when Landwehr loses,
Yeah.
he gets smashed in the first round and he goes to sleep. Like not TKO, like he gets knocked out. But you look at the punishment he took, him and David Onama dished back and forth, and he still came back and won that fight. I like him to win this fight, but I don't think it's going to come easy as it hardly ever does with the guy.
Well, can I just say one thing too on those two? Like, yeah, he when he loses, he loses. And they were against good competition, but both of them flying knees. I don't know if
Yeah,
Austin Lingo is going to be thrown out any flying
that's
knees
true.
either. So I think this is going to be one that the ass cheeks, they're going to be clinched for sure.
Yeah.
There's going to be moments you're going to have to clinch up, but I think at plus odds, I like that play.
I knew when I put that in, I'm like, this is an ass clincher one.
Yeah,
Like this,
yeah.
this is. I almost was like, do I want to put it in because I know it's just gonna make me sweat? But
Yeah.
I did. Did I mention I've had Perez Cop to not start round 3? By the way.
Oh, you did not. Okay.
Okay. Well, I have it to not start round 3 at minus 135. Yeah, we'll talk about the rest in the bet slip portion, but I will just mention also the other fight that I think is going to be great is Daniel Pineda, Tucker Lutz. Daniel Pineda, we have not seen him since the eye poke incident thing that happened.
Yep.
And, he is an very interesting fighter, this Daniel Pineda is, isn't he? Because this guy has looked incredible at times, like he did against Herbert Burns. But then he was getting tagged up by Cub Swanson. And he's got 14 losses in his professional career. He's got 2 UFC stints, combined 4 and 5 across both of them. I think in his current one, he's 1-1. So, I mean, he's also a guy who was in the PFL prior and had popped for PEDs. So he's got like a bunch of no contests as well on his resume. I don't know what to expect from him here, but I do feel like he's going to go for it and not allow Tucker Lutz to just coast to a victory. And because of that, I have more confidence in this one being a finish.
Yeah, well, Pineda's had 44 professional fights. 39 of them have ended inside of the distance. So
And
Tucker
you want to
Lutz
hear
may
this
not.
one?
Yeah.
Like, if anybody out there really likes this fight to go to a decision, Daniel Pineda's 0-5 in all 5 decisions that he's gone to. So,
Yeah.
Tucker Lutz, not exactly a heavy finisher either. So, I mean, it's possible.
Oh wait, I'm actually glad you brought up this fight. I do have Tucker Lutz. He is
Okay.
one leg of another 2-leg parlay. So Tucker Lutz there. I just think I worry about the layoff for Pineda, and I worry about that kill or be killed mindset because Tucker Lutz does have a very good fight IQ, and I think he can definitely win a decision, as Noah just alluded to. But I think he can even get Pineda to the ground and finish him as well.
Yeah.
So just more path to victory for me. The younger guy, the fresher guy. So I went with Lutz, 1/2 of a -105 parlay. We'll touch on the rest later.
I already mentioned Pineda Lutz on my good party ratio parlay
Yep.
plus 109, under 2.5. Okay, with that, Dominic, I think that's enough for UFC San Antonio. We'll talk a little bit more about our gripes on the betting side in a little bit, but let's get into some headlines. There's actually some good talking points this week. It starts with Leon Edwards, your and still, right? From last week. He made an appearance on the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani. And of course, what was on everybody's mind was what he thought of Dana essentially just giving Colby Covington the title fight. We talked about that, of course, on here a little bit last weekend. There's a clip on the YouTube channel. So if you would like to hear just that discussion, feel free to go check that out after this episode. With that being said, though, he said, Dominic, he will decline a fight with Colby Covington. Sort of speaking to, you could tell that there's a little bit of, originally instead of having headlines, before there was multiple bullet points here, my headline read, "Payback is a Brit." Which
I love that.
Funny.
I did see that. Yeah.
So I wanted to throw that out there because I was like, damn it, I have to change it because it doesn't really fit with the rest of these. But, but that's what it felt like. It felt like he was kind of out for a little bit like, you know what? When I was, had all this big long winning streak, but nobody wanted to give me a fight. What did Colby Covington say? He said, who's that? Called him Leon Scott, all this stuff.
Yep.
So now that Leon's got the title fight, Colby all of a sudden wants to fight him. And he's kind of like, no, fuck you. And I get that.
Yeah.
And, that's fine if he wants to do that. Problem is when everybody's like, hell yeah, because everybody was pissed about Colby getting the title fight. And I'm not saying there ain't good reason to be upset about it.
Dude, it's been the biggest talking point of the past week.
And I mean, because you rightfully do have a guy in Bilal Muhammad who is more deserving of it based off the current resumes, off the win streaks, But what's funny is everybody's like, hell yeah, Leon, he won't take this fight, not going to give Colby what he wants, going to stick it to the UFC. And then Leon goes, yeah, I think the right title fight for me next is Jorge Masvidal. Huh?
He had us in the first half.
I feel like there is some people out there. I can tell by the way, of course, Ariel and his crew acted about it because they were not against it. What it kind of comes down to, Dominic, is I feel like the UFC, when I really kind of simmered on this longer, because my thoughts when we talked about this on Monday, I was a little bit like, yeah, I wish he would go out and earn it a little more, but I kind of get it, right? Like I get what the UFC is doing.
Yeah.
I didn't really expect them to not go this direction. Like I was going to be kind of surprised if Bilal got the next title shot. Not that he doesn't deserve it. So if anything, I came off a little passive about the whole thing, probably compared to most people. But when I thought about it longer, I'm like, man, isn't it kind of dumb? And I'm not trying to say I'm smarter than those guys, but isn't it kind of dumb to grant Colby, say he's the title, he is getting the next title shot, when you have this big fight coming up with Masvidal Burns, which again, I'm not saying either of those guys should necessarily get the next shot, but it feels almost like promoter malpractice to say that fight has no stakes to it. That's what he said. There's no title shot on the line. shouldn't you just let this build, let people speculate? Because Gilbert
Yes.
Burns with the win there feels like a guy who could also be in the title
Yes.
conversation. So that's been something weighing on my mind a little bit that I feel like I should have acknowledged but didn't. The bigger thing here, though, Dom, is I think the UFC giving Colby Covington the title fight was the perfect mix to piss both sides off. There's two sides to this debate, and Dana, by announcing this, has pissed both of them off. You have the side that want the more merit-based matchup with Belal Muhammad. Well, Colby Covington's fought 4 times since the end of 2019. He's 2-2, the 2 losses, close title fights, but the 2 wins against, well, Jorge Masvidal and Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley no longer in the UFC. Belal Muhammad, meanwhile, has this very long unbeaten streak because he's got the no contest with Leon. But then you have the other side who is fine with, like, let's go for the biggest fight, the most exciting fight, the biggest storyline. Well, Dominic, that doesn't point to Colby Covington. That points to Jorge Masvidal if he wins that fight on UFC 287. So then you have those people going, well, why is Colby getting the fight? Jorge, Leon, 3-piece and a soda. It makes sense. So somehow they did the worst of both.
Yeah. And you've made like really good points, especially like they kind of put the UFC as they put themselves in a weird spot because you literally just you had to wait 2 weeks. Just wait 2 weeks. Don't say anything. Yeah. Like Colby, was back up, flew to London, made the weight. That's cool. He's in the discussions, obviously, if he's doing that. But don't say anything because then you've got speculation. You've got more importance on Burns Masvidal. It's already important. It's a huge co-main event. That adds more importance because Gilbert can put a win streak together if he beats Masvidal. If Masvidal wins, whatever you want to say about the guy, a win over Gilbert Burns, that's a pretty solid win with the storyline with Leon.
And Leon outright going public saying that's who he wants to fight next. People would be like, no shot Masvidal somehow skips the line, right?
Yeah. And I know the storyline about Belal is merit-based, resume-based. It's more than that. Him and Leon have fought each other before. It went to a no contest. There is history there between those two. There are more storylines for Burns, Masvidal, and Belal than there are for the man that has been, as of now, given the next title shot in Colby Covington.
Wow.
So
it's very interesting. I mean, again, do I think that either of the potential Leon Burns or Leon Belal fights are bigger, are going to do more buzz, are going to do more in pay-per-view buys if it's headlining, of course, versus Leon Colby? No, but you do raise a good point that it's not like Belal is strictly a merit-based argument either. I mean, there is a little bit of history there. So this is my thing, because I was sort of in this sort of, middle ground on Monday, strictly because I was like, look, I understand the UFC. I feel like the UFC took it as, we want a fight that's going to sell. And we know Colby's going to go out on social media. He's going to say a lot of crazy shit. Maybe some stuff we don't want to say, about people who work for the company. We'll get to that. He's going to really sell it. It's going to be a great lead up. We're probably going to do a pretty good number on pay-per-view. Social media is going to be buzzing, especially if Leon wins. If Colby wins, potentially you set up God forbid if Conor McGregor were to knock out Michael Chandler, all of a sudden, you have that fight, which the two of those guys going at it's just going to create this huge buzz. So I understand that. And they're like, but he's also a guy that's like at the top of the rankings. He's fought for the title twice. He's coming off the win over Masvidal, big grudge match, also a main event of a pay-per-view. So I feel like they looked at it as like the middle ground, but unfortunately they've just pissed off everybody.
Yeah.
They wanted something that was more merit than Masvidal, but also more star power than Belal. Instead, it's just made everybody angry. So I think it was just not the right move. I'm not saying it would have changed anything. If Masvidal goes in there and knocks out Burns, Colby probably still has a bigger right to fighting for a title than Masvidal is. He just beat him a year ago. And maybe we could debate that, because a win over Burns, that's a pretty good win.
Yeah.
But also, doesn't that elevate Colby's win over Masvidal?
Right.
I mean, it just gets confusing, So That's why it's all like it just feels like we should have just waited instead of just announcing
Mhm.
it. What this is not out of character for Dana. What is Dana White's like biggest quote? I don't make fights the night of the
Yeah,
fight. Like
and of course,
why did
this
this
one,
fight
he
have to get
yeah,
made? What
yeah,
was so
yeah.
special about this one? This man,
Yes.
they were basically announcing everywhere that John Jones Stipe was done deal after the card, and Dana wouldn't even commit to that. But Colby Covington versus Leon Edwards is so big, so massive, it's got to be booked now.
Yeah.
It's a little
Can I ask
weird.
you one question?
Yeah. What is it?
Because you talked about how if Masvidal beats Burns, isn't that a bigger win than Colby beating Jorge? But Jorge's, I get it. But if Jorge beats Gilbert, what's bigger? Jorge Leon, Colby Leon? Which one?
I mean, yeah, it's Jorge Leon probably.
Because of the three-piece in the soda from many
Well,
moons
I
ago?
mean, Jorge's. I again, we don't have a ton of numbers anymore to kind of back these up because the UFC don't normally release their pay per view buys anymore. So we're kind of left in the dark of actually how big of star power a lot of these guys have.
Yeah.
I know Jorge's losing streak here has kind of hurt his star power because, 2019, that guy was, I mean, he main evented a card with Nate Diaz, and it was for a fake belt, didn't even need a belt on it. It was just a fight that everybody wanted to see. Is Masvidal still at that level, like, of stardom? Probably not.
I feel like as a star, him and Colby are probably
I mean,
equal
they
playing
main
field
evented
now.
together a year
Well,
ago.
yeah. Yeah, true.
And here's another weird thing that I always remember is if I remember right, the rumor was that card didn't sell very well
I think so.
because Endeavor during their like quarterly whatever you call it, they were their quarterly update of the business, whatever,
Yeah.
to their investors. They're pointing out that UFC 274, which was Oliveira versus Gaethje, had sold over 400,000 pay-per-views. Well,
Yeah.
if Colby and Jorge in the same time frame had sold more, wouldn't you have picked that one? So that told
Right.
me that fight did less than 400,000, which also would make it kind of a disappointment because I think that was a fight a lot of people thought would hit that 500 mark to
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
set a standard. But that's again, that doesn't it also it doesn't just hurt Jorge, it kind of hurts Colby's like perceived value.
Mm-hmm.
Dana does seem to be a guy. You look at the reactions he does with Power Slap, where he doesn't care about the TV ratings. He cares about the social media, the how many retweets, how many likes, how many shares, all this stuff, how many views on TikTok, whatever. Colby, I think, generates more of that kind of buzz than Jorge
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
And because of that, I feel like Dana's in this mindset right now where he values that over the literal like numbers that a pay-per-view generates. So I think he views Colby as the bigger star because social media would tell you he's a bigger star. But is social
Mm,
media really painting the full picture? I don't know.
yeah. Very true.
Speaking of Colby Covington, he had another beef going on this week, and that's with old John Anik, the voice of the
Yeah.
UFC or the lead play-by-play man, uh, one of the best voices of all time. Also, one of the most likable guys of all
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Keep going.
So this kind of stems from Dom that I actually went and listened to the latest episode of Anik and Florian. John Anik, Kitty Florian. They have an MMA podcast they do like once a week.
Mhm.
It was originally on their own channel. They've now recently become under DraftKings. So they're on the DraftKings YouTube channel now.
Oh.
So on their same network, and I don't know if this is also under DraftKings or what, John Anik's brother does a podcast with Bilal
Yeah.
Muhammad.
Yep.
So
Remember the name or
John
something?
Anik, yeah. So John Anik, Bilal, they're tight, right?
Yep.
Because
Yep.
there's that connection right there. Well, I listened to Anik and Florian, and I didn't see. They talked about it. They talked about Dana saying that about Colby and how Bilal, was upset about it. But Anik never really said anything that would lead me to believe that he was like if anything, I thought he on a podcast he should be allowed to kind of speak his mind. I
Right.
felt like he kind of just held himself out of that because I'm sure he felt like he's probably a little biased on the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really say anything negative about Colby. So I don't know where this is coming from. I don't know if it's strictly Colby knowing that this would generate some buzz,
Yeah.
and just because he's connected to Blau, he felt like he could get away with going after him. I don't know. But Colby essentially called out John Anik for, dick riding Blau or whatever he
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
But then he he took it a step further, Dom. He said,
Mm.
I don't want your kids to have to grow up without a dad. Don't forget basically how close they live. They're not that far apart. They're both live in the state of Florida.
In Florida. Yeah.
So, anytime these kind of things happen, we just had this with Colby a year ago where Jorge, sucker punched him outside of a steakhouse in Miami. And there's been other, Connor and Habib build up, got a little dark at times. Typically, Dana's kind of stuck to his guns on, like, this is the fighting business. People are going to say mean things to each other. But when this involves someone who is not a fighter, this is a guy who works for your company, but he is not a fighter. Do you feel like they should set a little bit of a standard here?
I just think this is stupid. You mean like the UFC set a standard, though? Is that what you meant?
Should the UFC, I'm not saying they should outright reprimand him, but should there be sort of this no tolerance policy implemented on going after people outside of the fight? Like, if Colby was to say something like that about Leon, I don't think as many people are making a big deal out of this. It's the fact that he went after a guy, like, it's kind of, it's everything that I know what Colby's doing here. Like, this is why
it's all for
talking
buzz,
about it
for sure.
He's never actually going to do any of this. We all know that. But should it be allowed to just be said, like, recklessly? Like, because problem is, Dom, and Luke Thomas made this point on Morning Combat, that when the UFC doesn't say anything and Colby just says this at John Anik, Colby has this rabid fan base that sort of attack people online. So now all of a sudden John Anik has people attacking him, attacking his family on social media. Is it because of that? Does the UFC need to do something to sort of show this is not okay?
I wouldn't mind it. And at the end of the day, one, John Anik's not a fighter, first and foremost. But secondly, he's an employee of the UFC. Right. He's an employee like 400, 500 other people are. The ticket guys, the marketing guys. He's an employee. And a fighter going after an employee of the company they fight for seems wrong in many, many ways. Let me take it a step further, by the way. The irony in this stupid-ass call-out of John Anik, Colby is threatening to do to John Anik what he pressed charges on Jorge Masvidal for doing to him. What? Come on, man. Come on. And that point fully wasn't me. I saw someone kind of say something like that on Twitter as well, but I had to bring that up. It's just stupid. But like you said, nothing's going to happen. But you bring up a good point about like the fan base thing and stuff. Like, John Anik is as good as it gets. And he's a man that shows zero bias when he's calling fights, even when he's calling a Bilal fight or the DC fights that he would call. Right. So unbiased. Not that other commentators show it, but it comes out a little. Like Biz being in the UK, he had a little bit more love toward him. So
DC
on and so forth.
With the guys that train at AK.
Right. Anik is as straight and narrow as it gets. He's the best commentator, really one of the best in all of sports right now. And he just seems like an awesome human being. So it's just gross. It's stupid. It's pointless. But again, like you said, we're talking about it. Twitter's talking about it. The clips are getting shared everywhere, right? That's what Colby is so good at doing, getting his name out there. And it goes to what you said about the Dana thing with social media. What does Colby do? He gets clicks and he gets views on social media that creates buzz, creates hype. This is another example of it here. It's not toward a fighter. It's not about a title fight, but it's about the lead play-by-play man in the UFC.
Some people may be surprised to hear this, but as we sit here recording on Thursday, we are less than a week removed from when Dana initially said Colby gets the next shot. I can sit here with confidence and say everything that's happened since he said that has only made him more confident that Colby is the guy to be next for Leon.
You're probably right. Yeah.
Now, I do just want to say quickly that remember when Dan Hardy kind of went after Herb Dean during the middle of the fight?
Mm-hmm.
Dana
Yep.
said after, if any of my employees, if any of the fighters talk to a referee like that, you will be fired, basically.
Yeah.
Kind of feel like a little bit of that should be kind of going on here. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is a man, John Anik, just doing his job. I mean, not that podcasting is his main job, but he's just a guy kind of caught in the middle.
Crossfire.
Yeah, caught in the crossfire here. Like, it's not his fight.
Yeah. I agree.
But I'm sure Colby literally went after him strictly because he knows what a beloved figure John Anik is, and yeah, I mean it's all calculated.
Oh yeah, undoubtedly.
Last one, just real quick. Dana White, he was talking to the, I believe it was the Sports Business Journal. I want to say it was just a written article. He said he is planning to go back into boxing, Dom, within the
Okay.
next, I believe it was 12 to 24 months. He said he will have started a boxing promotion.
Okay.
Of course, this is not the first time Dana has talked about going into boxing. His roots are actually in
Mm-hmm.
boxing, but more recently than that, Zuffa boxing was this
Yep.
idea for a long time. Um, the McGregor Mayweather fight, Dana came out. I remember one of the press conferences wearing a Zuffa boxing shirt. So it's always been something he's kind of had in his brain. But
Mm-hmm.
then more recently, I've seen interviews with him where he talks about what a mistake he almost made. There was some business decision he almost made a couple years ago involving boxing that would have screwed him completely. He's so glad, and he's like, I will never do boxing, and blah blah blah. It's too broken. It can't be fixed. And now here he is again. And a lot of this is due to that kid that he's got on Fight Pass. He's promoting everywhere. That Callum, forgot his last name. I just
Yeah.
texted
From
the other day.
Ireland, no?
Yeah, so I was kind of wondering this because I had been seeing them promoting him
Yep.
for a
I
little
thought the
bit,
same thing.
and then he was on Fight Pass. But I know Fight Pass has boxing on there, like not super abnormal. So I didn't say anything. But it didn't really surprise me when I saw this because I was like, okay, this kid's supposed to be like the guy they're
The
building
poster
up to
boy.
be
Yeah.
that poster boy for his promotion. So what do you make of this, Dom? I mean, we know the pay structure of boxing is a lot different than the UFC. The whole structure of the sport is so much different. There's so much more power given to the fighters in negotiations and really everything. So, with that being said, do you really see this coming into fruition, or how will it go? Will he actually become a player in boxing?
Maybe. I think maybe's as much as I can go because I felt like that's where I stood with Zuffa boxing. Oh, maybe. Maybe Dana will
Mhm.
start this kind of boxing under the umbrella of the UFC or under Zuffa, rather, I guess. Because, he started power slapping. And I know it's not under the umbrella of the UFC, but damn sure feels like it sometimes. Who would ever thought, by the way, he goes to power slap fighting over boxing first? But we'll see. He's really putting his hand in a lot of jars, man. I mean, he's
What's that
already
make
such a
you? That
busy
kind of
man.
makes me wonder. Just people were already speculating about his level of
Yeah, man.
interest in really
Involvement.
being, his level of involvement with the UFC when the power slap stuff started.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If he's starting a boxing promotion, I mean, I don't know. Like it doesn't exactly feel like he's going to be putting more time into the UFC.
I mean, I feel like if boxing starts and power slap stays around, he's got to. I don't know if we see him as the president for many more years.
I
I
would
think
say
he,
I think he stays as the president, but it will be purely a
as a face.
a figurehead.
Yeah.
And that's
At
kind of what he's
minimum.
doing now, but I mean, even to a greater extent. Like he has almost
Yeah.
no involved. He may not even be involved in the matchmaking meetings and all that. Like that's the next step, and I could see that happening.
Yeah. And I don't have much of a hand in boxing as like even you. So again, all I can say is maybe, but like, what do you think it is realistic and possible for him to kind of have a boxing banner?
Realistic. I'm very hesitant to say it's realistic, but it's hard to doubt Dana White, man. I mean, it really
Yeah.
is. Like
Yeah.
he's kind of a guy that makes things happen. Whether you like the power slap stuff or not, he's finding a way to keep it around.
Yeah.
So if he's really that dead set on being a boxing promoter, being in that business, do I believe he could actually? Do I believe he will do it? Like start it? Yes. Do I think he's ever going to be really competing for a Canelo Alvarez or a
Right.
Deontay
Right.
Wilder, a Tyson Fury, whoever? No, I don't think he's. I think he wants to try to do it his way. So I think what you could see is it'll definitely be popular because he's going to do what he did with Power Slap. He's going to connect it to the UFC. And, I'm more fine with that because I like boxing.
Yeah.
But he's going to connect it to the UFC. He's going to put that promotional pull behind it. So it's going to gather a lot of interest. And he's going to try to do what he did with martial arts with the UFC for boxing. He's going to try to keep guys under, boxing's much more of a Wild West. You have like 4 or 5 boxing titles and
Yeah.
like
It's very confusing.
yeah, all these boxing commissions have a title. You're
Yep.
the champion. You could be the champion of 2. Another guy's the champion of 1. Another guy's the champion of another.
Yeah.
It gets a little less confusing when I've only been really paying attention for a few months, Dom, and I promise you it gets easier. But with that being said, do I think Dana can just do what he did with the UFC to boxing and make it like a real big, sustainable thing? Not really. I mean, Callum Walsh, by the way, was the guy
Okay.
that the boxer that he's promoting. Well, you know that I can't imagine Dana ever paying the kind of money that these top boxers get paid to fight.
They make a lot.
So if he's
For
not
shit.
willing to do that, when Callum Walsh gets to a certain level, if he stays undefeated, he's going to get to a point where he is too big for Zuffa
And he'll
boxing or
leave.
whatever it's called.
Yeah.
So that means that Dana's promotion can exist, but it's always going to be like, a place to promote these guys. And then when they're ready to really go into the big leagues of boxing, they'll go do that.
Well, do you think there's a place for that? Maybe. Do you think there's a place for
I think
the
there's a place
newer?
for it for sure.
Yeah.
I just don't see Dana White being like cool with that.
Having. Yeah. Yeah. That makes
Like
really,
it
really good
just
sense.
it just feels like if he's gonna do it, he's gonna want to be a big
He would
player.
want to compete. Yeah. You're right. Especially
Which
like.
is why again, there's so many factors pulling me each direction. Like I think
Mm,
no, it's not very realistic. Well, maybe he's willing to change, be more open to that kind of but he doesn't want to go into boxing and do it like it's being done. That's what he's always said.
yeah.
But I don't see how he's going to go in and do it his way if his way is going to be similar to what he built in MMA. Like I don't see it. But I doubt him? No, because I really can't. I mean, he does make things happen.
As a fan, would you kind of prefer that? Like almost a minor league system, if you will. Would that be intriguing to you? Okay, we have it under this UFC umbrella, quotes there around that word. We can build up these young prospects. How good are they? And then it makes it easier for you and even someone like me, who's much less involved
Mhm.
in the world of boxing, to follow them and create intrigue for me to watch more of the big boy boxing. And this is just an additional part, but definitely answer that first one. But the second part is a lot of UFC fighters talk about boxing. This would be a really easy way for them to get
Yeah.
into it with Dana White's. So,
Yeah, no, I do think there's a place for it. I think I would like to see it. Like
mhm.
if that's what they're going to do, I think nobody better to do that than
Yeah,
someone
yeah,
like Dana and the UFC or whoever's going to be a part of this group. Because I know Power Slap, there's some overlap with the staff, but also like the management level people are, I
hmm,
believe, different. Like I don't think Hunter Campbell's
right.
working for Power Slap. But do I believe Dana is the kind of guy that could be the best guy to build that kind of minor league system or whatever? Maybe because there would actually be some structure to it. We can, talk about the pay, whatever, but even in today's boxing, the 95% of the money goes to those top guys.
Yeah,
The guys who you're watching real early on those cards don't make much at
yeah,
all. They make less than the guys who open UFC cards. So
yeah.
that's why, you know, we can argue about it, but I'm just saying I could see a lot of young boxers being like, this is a great marketing and promotion to get me right in
Yes,
somewhere. a bit like
Yes.
Contender Series for boxing. It's kind of
Yep.
in some ways. And then yes, it would allow a lot of older, maybe aging out UFC fighters go because the UFC is probably looking at some of this Anderson Silva and you got
Well,
game
you
bred
said Holly
boxing.
Holm earlier, by the way. Can you elaborate a
Yeah.
little?
They asked her when she said she signed her 6-fight deal. They said that they talked to her about boxing, and she
Okay.
said the conversation had been had, but that she was focused on MMA for
Okay. I was just
right now.
curious.
Jorge Masvidal also said that the UFC are kind of backing his game bred boxing event coming up.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's interesting or not, but maybe it'll be on Fight Pass. Maybe they'll kind of use it to maybe see how boxing does on their platform. I don't know. It's interesting, but Dana's done this before, so I don't know.
Yeah, true. Also true.
Fight announcements.
Ooh, we got a couple good ones.
All
huh?
of these hitting today, pretty much. So
Yeah.
three of them, Dom. I'll go through the list. Get your thoughts. Arman Sarukian does get his next fight booked, and it'll be against Moicano wants money.
Sick ass fight, man.
I always forget if he says Hanato or Moicano in that. Isn't it Moicano?
Moicano. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's happening on April 29th. Then you got Ian Machado Gary taking on Daniel Rodriguez May 13th. And Jack Hermanson versus Brendan Allen in a 5-round main event on June 3rd. So, Dominic, the good, the bad, the ugly of these three. Fuck, marry, kill these three fights. Actually do
You
it.
actually want me to? Okay. Ooh. Oh, that's tough, actually. That's a toughie. How about we go to Pound Town with Machado Gary D-Rod?
Okay. I'm with you.
Wow, this is gonna hurt to say this. Marry Saryukian Moicano, kill Hermanson Allen.
I actually agree with that.
But with that said, now listen, I saw your tweet. You sent it in the group, and I agree. The fight night headliner June 3rd should be Albazi KKF, Kaikar France, for sure. That's just another example of flyweights getting slept on. But as a Brendan Allen fan, I'm happy for him at least. But more so, main event aside, this is a big fight for him. Big step up against a contender level guy and Jack Hermanson. So I really do like that one. But again, based off of the game we just played, Saryuki and Moicano, most excited for that one. And I probably I really think about it. It's like, well, I don't really see Saryukian losing, but damn it, if he does lose, Moicano is going to have a hell of a performance. And I think that's what makes it so fun to think about.
Armand should be a heavy favorite in that fight, but
yeah, I wonder what they'll be.
But I've been liking Moicano's run he's been on. I even compared him to Charles Oliveira, which is like the third time I've made that comparison on this episode. But that comparison was legitimate. I said I could see Moicano even having that late run in his career as a champion. What? Bit ballsy at lightweight, but you know what? Fuck it, man. I like Moicano. So this would be the kind of fight, though, that he would have to do to upset and win if he is going to be that kind of guy later in his career. As far as the other fights, I mean, Hermanson Allen is not a bad fight. It's actually a really intriguing fight.
Yeah.
Especially for Brendan Allen. That's the problem, though. Not as much intrigue for Jack Hermanson.
Is that Jack what kind of pains you with the main event?
Jack Hermanson, it's not that I don't even dislike him or anything. He's a good fighter, but it doesn't feel like he should be in a main event spot, being that he's been on such a 50-50 kind of run as of late. He's sort of fallen out of the even contendership. Or fallen out of even top level middleweight status. Middleweight already not a super stacked division. Brendan Allen looked so good in his last fight, Dom. I have more questions about Jack Hermanson. Even though Brendan Allen's the one taking the step up here, I'm not even sure I can confidently say Jack Hermanson is a step up from Andre Muniz. I'm not exactly sure I can say that. Ooh. It's a step up rankings-wise. But which is why for Brendan Allen, I think this is a great fight to take. Yeah. But Jack Hermanson's going to have to really show me something here, because even when he's won recently, the Chris Curtis fight, It's like, okay, he looks fine, but it's just it leaves you something. There's something missing.
Yeah, it's like one of the guys that good fighter, but he's already been there and done that. He's had his handful of main events. It's like, okay, well, if he makes another run, gets in title contention, then yeah, 5 round for a title, right? But other than that, you just don't need to see it because we want two people with two very important storylines to get these main events. And you're right, it feels like in this one,
Yeah.
Brendan probably deserving at this point to get his first
Yeah.
smack, right? Number 12. But the other side of the coin doesn't. So I see where you're
If
going.
it was Brendan Allen, Sean Strickland, would you be more open to this being a main event, or would you still kind of feel like
Yeah, I think so because Strickland, I feel like a little bit more potential still, and they fought each other before, so you add in another storyline
I'd be
there.
more okay with it, but I'd still prefer KKF Albazi. I mean, that fight to
Yeah,
me is
yeah.
just it's gonna be like the one that opens the main card, and it's just gonna piss me off.
I feel like Brendan versus. I was gonna say Delidze, but I don't know. It's hard for me to say that now after he lost to Vittori. But like if he were to fight like a Duplessis or something, 5 rounds. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's a good
Something
point.
like
Yeah,
that. So
and Drickus should be a guy getting a main event
he
because
should. Yes, he should.
we've seen the gas tank in question, but it's been mostly 3-round fights. So
Yeah, yeah.
I will also mention or ask you a question about that Machado Gary D Rod fight
Mm-hmm.
because we love us some D Rod, but also
Yep. Yep.
Ian Machado Gary coming off the best performance of his UFC career, I would argue.
Mm-hmm.
My question for you: are you surprised that they're giving him D Rod? He actually
Yes.
wanted this fight, but are you surprised they're giving it to him?
Oh yeah, I
I'm
was.
shocked.
Now, I just think D-Rod's a bigger step up than I would have thought he was going to get. Like I wanted him to take a step up,
Yeah,
Ian Gary. I would not have thought it would be D-Rod next.
this
D-Rod
is risky.
is, I mean, essentially top 15. He's probably number 16 behind Michelle Pereira. So like, Ian Gary wins this one. You're in with the big boys now. There's no more treading water. And if he loses, it's not bad to lose D-Rod. There's nothing to hang your hat on. D-Rod's honestly underrated for the most part, I feel like. Hardcore fans really respect him. Other than that, not a lot of people know how good he is. So, it is interesting. And I maybe cut you off a little. You said something about how it's dangerous or something for Gary, or
it's
what was it?
super risky.
Yeah,
this
risky.
This is not the kind. Look, even I wanted him to take a step up. Even I'm like, whoa, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe I'm putting too much on D-Rod. I mean, I expected him to look better against Neil Magny than he did, but I still think that guy's damn good. Truthfully, Dom, when I first saw this fight announced, I went, I favor D-Rod here. Like, I don't know what
That's
the odds
another
are gonna
one.
be,
Like, yeah.
but I could see the number being a little heavy on Machado Gary, and I'm taking D-Rod. But
if it's
could I also see Ian Gary being an underdog for that fight? Yes, I could. Like I don't know where those I don't know how Vegas views D-Rod. I really don't.
Yeah, I agree, man. That's a good one. It should be like, regardless of who wins or loses, on paper, that's a fun ass fight.
Yeah, it's a
You look at
great
the fight
fight.
that Gary and the performance that he just had, and then just traditionally what you get from D-Rod and his fights, dude, that's an awesome fight.
That's a good point. Next up, the below average bet slip. Of course, we've been kind of talking about a few of our plays as we've gone through here. We do want to just say we had an absolute hater in the comments last week. So I am going to just make it clear again. This is not betting advice. We just like to be a part of the greater conversation. We both enjoy MMA betting. MMA betting and sports betting in general has become such a huge part of sports podcasting, of being on social media for sports, anything.
It's only
because of
going to
that, we just like to be a part of the conversation. And that's what we're doing here. Literally, the name of the segment is Below Average Bet Slip.
Yeah. We've literally never claimed to give advice. We've told you guys to fade us, as a matter of fact, on this show. So
I mean,
by the way, though, for the hater, it turned out well for you, by the way. But anyways,
that's so. I mean, I try not to even point these comments out on the show, but so oh my god, it was the funniest.
That was a perfect one. Yeah,
I didn't see it till after the fight either. If I had seen that before the fight, truthfully, I would have been sweating that fight because I'm like, please. I'm like, every bet can miss, but this one's got to hit. But anyways, just want to make that clear
Yeah,
again.
we're having fun.
I feel like I say it a lot, but also we reserve the right to not post our entire bet slip here. If you want to get the full list of plays going into that card Saturday, just so you can again compare, contrast, fade, do whatever you want, head over Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Follow us at the Bajma, the BAJ MMA in the top left corner if you're watching on YouTube. Twitter specifically, we post the full bet slip the day of. So I know Dominic said he's a little lighter on plays. He could have more. I feel pretty confident this is all I'm going to have, but there will be cases in the future, I'm sure,
Yeah.
where that will not be the case. So,
Yep.
Dominic, I know we don't have as much probably to talk about in terms of our actual plays, but I agree with you. This card is tough. I thought last week's card was tough. This week's card, when you get deep on these prelims, if people really know these fighters, like have watched them as they came up through the regional scene, there is a ton of money to be made here because every fight is like even money, close odds.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you don't know a ton about these fighters or don't know a ton about the matchups, what they're going to do, a bit unpredictable, it is scary to say the least to really hedge your bet on anybody in here.
No, I agree, man. And like what I always do when I'm starting to build out my bets is I start with fight one. I analyze all the stats, the records, the wins, the losses. Is there anything here that I like? I take it to the odds. What's it looking like? That's how I determine it. Fight by fight, I go up the ladder. And this one, man, I was struggling. I was talking to myself while I'm doing. I'm like, shit. I'm not going to try and force anything just for quantity. I want to make money. I want to,
Right.
have good bets, especially with some of these off weeks I've been having. So I really had a hard time finding value. We already talked about some, but I only have 3 total plays right now. 2 of them are parlays. I talked about the ladies' night. The other leg with Tucker Lutz was CJ Vergara against Daniel Lacerda, Daniel De La Silva. I don't know. I've seen like 8 different names.
Daniel
for the guy.
De Silva or Daniel Lacerda.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one.
But I went with Vergara because of just fight IQ and just better all around fighting. Daniel is just wow. 3 fights in the UFC, been finished all 3 times, I think, in the first round. I don't even know if the dude's ever been to a third round even. So if Vergara can just kind of avoid the danger and the wildness that Daniel's going to present, I like him over the course of 3 rounds and maybe even a finish. That was another one I was debating if he could win by finish, but I'm like, he doesn't have the best track record with finishes. So I just went money line there. So again, he was paired with Tucker Lutz minus 105. And then the only other one that we didn't touch on yet, Manuel Torres, money line, minus 145, so 1.45 units against Trey Ogden. I worry on this one a little if Ogden gets to fight to the ground because Torres has been to a third round once and it went to a decision. He did win it, but other than that, every other fight has ended in the first round. So we don't have a lot of, track record on the guy getting into the later rounds. How will he fare against a guy that's a grinder and Trey Ogden? But I really believe in his skill set. I remember even seeing him on Contender thinking, okay, that next wave of Mexican MMA, Raul Rosas Jr., Manuel Torres, so on and so forth. These really, really young, talented guys.
Can I tell you what scared me off of going that way? Was just because Ogden, the way he fought Daniel Zellhuber, who was another guy that came in with even more hype and had greater odds. And he looked pretty good in that fight, Ogden did. So that's kind of what, even though I know these are 2 completely different fighters, I'm just like, it scared me off. I feel like Ogden's just like he's just a bet buster right now. I don't know.
Yeah, man, dude, I don't blame you at all. That's definitely my most risky of the 3. And if I had to pick one that I'm most confident in of the 3 right now, I'm probably going to go the ladies' night parlay. I think
I still like it though. Together. Like I like that as a single. I'm not mad at it or anything, but it's just, I mean, you just don't know.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, that's all I got as of now. Maybe I add a couple more that you'll see in this weekend, but right now, just 3. We'll see what happens.
Can you tell me what your odds were again?
Manuel Torres, money line, minus 145. Ladies' night parlay and the other parlay, Vergara and Lutz, were both minus 105.
So the only thing that would worry me about your plays, again, just because I've been doing better recently, You have a better track record for this. Last year is proof of that. But I will just say the only thing that would worry me if I had your 3 plays is that they're all minus money. So
Yep.
if one of them loses, you're kind of like,
I'm way behind the 8 ball.
yeah, that's been kind of my, I think, key so far is I've been
Yep.
doing a lot of plays, not forcing anything, but I've also not been second guessing myself. So like if there's something that my head's pulling at, I tend to just trust the instinct. I mean, I'm looking at the stats, don't get me wrong. But
Right.
there's sometimes, there's a couple bets on here where I would be like, oh, but then that guy went to a decision one time. Do I really want to take the under in that fight? So I've been doing less of that, and I think it's worked out better for me. Truthfully, I've went over most of the plays I have. The only ones I'll mention that I didn't already, Altamirano, Salvador under 2.5 minus 135. I believe just like what you said with one of your guys, Salvador. I believe he's at around 15 professional MMA fights, and 14 of them he's finished. Altamirano, a little more risky, but that dude puts on a fast pace, and he's also willing to get into a brawl, and that's why I could see the makings of a fun fight, fun finish, hopefully. That last parlay that I didn't really finish talking about. So plus 176, I had Vera Sandhagen to start round 4, Holly Holm money line, and CJ Vergara money line. So I'm also on CJ Vergara. And then that one, the good party ratio parlay plus 109. So
Okay.
that's pretty much all I got, Dom. Actually, yeah, I mentioned Landwehr Lingo to start round 3. So with that, we'll go to the segment to finish the show. The only segment we could do to finish the show. It's a little segment we like to call closing statements. Now, Dominic, you owned up to the fact that recently you have been struggling to come up with closing statements before it's really time to do it. Did you do a better job of that today?
Would you be disappointed in me if I said no?
No. Let me ask you this.
Hmm?
March Madness, we're in the second weekend starting, well, right now.
Right now.
As of about an hour ago. So I'm sure we're both ready to, start watching. But without knowing, I've not seen any score for the current game going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any team pulling you in their direction that you think could really, any of the teams that have been kind of surprising thus far, you think could be the ones to make that run?
I'll tell you, I mean, shit. I've never had a worse year for a bracket. I knew coming in though, this was going to be just a sick March Madness. Like there was going to be upsets everywhere. Yeah. So, I mean, I can't even really pick someone to win, but maybe a run. I wouldn't be surprised Florida Atlantic beats Tennessee tonight, to be honest.
Ooh, that's an interesting pick.
Let me tell you, I bet on Tennessee a couple times in the regular season. And holy shit, did they just burn me more than once. One of them was a 20-leg parlay. I hit 19 of them. The one leg that lost was Tennessee. That's the one that stands out the most.
It happens every time.
Every time. So, yeah, man, I mean, it's nothing against the Volunteers, but I think Florida Atlantic at the 9 seed, they fended off against Fairleigh Dickinson. It was a close game, but I think a close game with them doesn't necessarily represent how good they are. I think they can upset Tennessee tonight. I actually have a bet on them. It's funny I brought that up. I have Florida Atlantic +3, so we'll see.
I took the alternate under in that game because Tennessee unders are like printing money.
There you go. Dude, this whole tournament has been printing money on the unders.
Yeah, it has been, and I've been cashing in every bit of it. But no, in all honesty, like I've been doing the 2-leg parlays for March Madness just because I understand I've been so bad at college basketball this year that I didn't even want to really go down that path the same way. So I did take like an alternate under. The furthest I could make it, Tennessee FAU. Forget what I combined that with. But I'm actually going to pick a team from the same region that I think can make a run. I actually had it in my bracket, Michigan State in the Elite Eight.
Yeah.
So I if they beat Marquette, and that was the game that, obviously you'd feel unsure about. But then I feel like Kansas State's even better than that Marquette team. Big 12, best basketball conference this year. They've been my favorite conference to watch. Unfortunately, the other team I really like in that conference was TCU.
Same,
lost
bro.
to Gonzaga. I really thought they might be able to pull that one out. Kansas State's kind of the team that I have a vested interest in some ways, but also
Would
for
you like
my
to see them win it all, though?
but also
Is that
for
if
my
you had to pick one?
bracket, Michigan State would be nice to get to the Elite Eight. But I don't know. Kansas State, whoever wins that game is going to be my team to kind of say I
Cheer
want
them
to
on
win
the rest of the way. I like
No
that.
offense,
I like
Xavier. I know you're from my home
Yeah,
state,
true.
but it is what it is.
Yeah.
So Dominic, anything else for closing statements before we get out of here?
That's all I got. I'm glad you brought that up, though. A little basketball talk,
Yeah.
betting talk.
So tonight's homework, make sure you come prepared with a closing statement.
I know.
Sunday.
I'm sorry. I'm
But
apologize
it's not.
to you, to the fans.
No. It's hard because part of it is supposed to be spontaneity, right? It's supposed to be just
Yeah.
something you get to the
On
end
the
of the
brain.
episode, something on the brain that you want to, I think it's a fun way to end the show sometimes because we have some very random
They can,
conversations.
Yeah.
But if they don't, we don't have to force anything either.
Right. If we don't have nothing, it just
Isn't that
is.
just like the motto for this podcast? Don't force it. Like,
really
I
is.
feel like it's been a mindset of ours from day one. Don't force anything.
We're the shit. Let's just be honest.
My name's Noah Baker. That's Dominic Slee. We are but just two of the below average Joes, and we'll see you guys on Monday.
I smell pasta.